And broadcast. Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's Facebook Live. This is Tiara International. And it's fun today because look, there are 5 of us all on the call. We've been doing more like 2 here, 3 there. But this Friday, for some reason, we're all here except for Allison. And I know she's going to be showing up on one of these in the next week or so. So I'm Betsy Sobiak, one of the global leaders for Tiara International, a women's leadership development organization. And with me, I have the other global leaders. So Beth, why don't you introduce yourself, where you're calling from, who you are?
I'm Beth Rusky. I'm calling from the Chicago area and happy to be on today's call.
Andrea?
I'm calling from the Netherlands, and I'm happy to have the chance to chat the 5 of us.
I know. Francisca?
From the Netherlands in Bergen. Very happy to be here with the five of us. Yes.
And Peg.
Yes, I'm Peg Rowe, and I'm also calling from the Chicagoland area.
Yeah, awesome. And just a little note that this morning, Andrea and Peg came right from launching the Tiara certification program, where we certify coaches in the Tiara model for true leadership. So it's one of those days where we're just hanging out online with groups of people all day.
I've been on video conference all day. I had a first meeting on video conference, and then we went right into model certification, and now we're on Facebook. So this is my day.
Well, I hope you're wearing like sweatpants and slippers from like here down.
Slippers, yes. Sweatpants, no.
So today it's February on the day this is being recorded. I know you may be listening to it at any time. First of all, thanks to any of you who are watching us live. We appreciate that you tune in wherever you are. And then I know lots of you listen to the recording. It's February. Last week, Andrea and I talked about love. We had kind of a dialogue that surprised ourselves. So if you haven't listened to that yet, that might be a good one to check out. And today we're taking this love conversation in a slightly different way, more of an appreciation conversation. And we're talking about when you want to appreciate or recognize somebody, how do you do it in a way that's really meaningful to them? And this is something that could be applied to the workplace setting, of course, because we get so busy that we know we need to recognize people and we don't have time, and it spirals sort of out of control. But also in a home environment, or our friends or our kids. And in a way, it ties into the love theme, because even though we might not call it love in a workplace setting, it's like that connection and making someone really feel like you do appreciate them, which sparks that inner connection and that fire. So who wants to start? Who wants to start with either go in the direction of, well, here are some things that I know really work, or if you want to say, here's what you have seen not work, or some pitfalls that people fall into. Either one could be the starting point. Who has something to kick us off?
I'll kick us off. I think years ago, people used to lead or parent even, from this model of, treat people the way you want to be treated. Like they talk about that being the golden rule, right? Treat others the way you want to be treated. Well, if you do that in your career and in your life, that's great, because you'll be treating people hopefully nicely, but you might be missing the mark in what actually works for them. Because if you don't know what really works for somebody else, what you're doing is you're imposing what works for you on somebody else. And, I'll just tell a quick story and then we can pass it around. Is I have 2 sons. They were both growing up. They were both very good athletes throughout, their career and into college. They were in the spotlight. They were the leaders. They were quarterbacks, this type of thing on different teams. But they were so different. One shunned the spotlight. Like it was torture for him to stand with a camera in his face and talk about his great performance on the field. The other one couldn't wait to be interviewed. And it wasn't about him. It was about the team, but he just absorbed it in a completely different way. And if I, as a parent, treated them both the same way, it would actually only work for one of them. if I wasn't able to adjust. So I'll just kick it off with that thought.
So a question for you, for the son that doesn't like the spotlight, how would you acknowledge him that was meaningful to him?
He does not like the public praise, but he likes it in private.
Mhm.
So for him, I learned to have a more quiet, more intimate one-on-one conversation to let him know whether I was proud of him or how great I thought it was, or, and there's an old phrase from business that you praise in public and you criticize in private.
Mhm.
But that too, could not work, right? Not that you want to criticize in public, but
Right.
praising him in public was not. He actually got. He tried to run away from it, basically.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, I want to go next in terms of, because I know, Beth, for me, you're such a role model in finding the right tone, also especially because you are able to be very specific in what you praise. So as a receiver, and having been fortunately also on the receiving end of you complimenting me, or when you try to introduce me to people, I always felt seen for the right reasons. So I always recognized myself in what you were saying, and that also makes me think, especially in the workplace, when people have gone through trainings of how that one should also make compliments. When this becomes a trick, then it completely misses the mark too. I really hate that.
Yeah. Yeah. A couple of things that I would add to that is, especially in a business setting, it's interesting to me because often leaders do get the guidance that says you need to appreciate people. And if they're not skillful at it, what it looks like is what we call an attaboy or an attagirl. Great job. But what happens with great job is it actually lacks anything meaningful. So the person who's receiving that doesn't know, to your point, Andrea, were you really seen? Did you really see what I did? And did you really understand the impact of it?
Exactly.
And it's not, if it doesn't include those things, then we really wonder, well, what's the purpose of that? So I always have that guidance of, if I'm going to give acknowledgement, then I want to, call out what specifically am I acknowledging, and often what's the impact of it. So why was that so great? What made that so great? And that serves for me two purposes. One, the receiver actually feels seen and heard. Like, oh, you did actually see what I did. Great. I'm glad to know that. But the other is, what we know is when we offer that kind of acknowledgement, people are likely to do that same thing over again. So if we want that great behavior repeated, then it helps to be specific enough so that people go like, oh, okay, that's something that I want to be doing over and over again, because that actually works. Mm-hmm. So I think there's a lot to be said for how you up your game, if you will. And the other thing I would say, Beth, is I found the same thing when I was in business that you observed with your sons. I worked with people who, unless you gave them acknowledgement in front of sort of a big, massive room in front of everybody, it didn't count. Like, I only want it that way. And then other people would be fine in a smaller team setting, feeling acknowledged. And somebody else might just want a one-on-one conversation. I had an executive secretary who worked for me for a while, and she was great. I mean, she did a fantastic job. You would love to be acknowledging her in public. She would literally want to run out of the room. Absolutely. She wanted nothing to do with that. What worked best for me was not only to say it to her privately, but I would write her a note. And she loved getting the notes, because then she would go back and read them, and then she could savor the acknowledgement and feel really good about it. But she was super self-conscious to get it in any kind of personal way, because it just felt like she was in a spotlight she didn't want to be in.
Right. Mm-hmm. I would say, for myself, a couple of things I've noticed. One is there are a lot of ways you can also show acknowledgement that's not just the thank you note or a compliment or something like that. Again, in the business setting, if you know what really is important to somebody, like some people might like being taken out to lunch. Some people might hate being taken out to lunch. Some people might like a Friday early leave, and some people might not think that is really the thing that would acknowledge them. I was talking to one of my clients on Monday, and there was someone who's really valued who was not getting a job bid that they put in for, because they actually have some leadership skills they want to really optimize in the current role that they're in. And we were talking exactly about this, like, how can you make sure that this person feels valued and invested in, even though they didn't get what they thought they wanted next? And the end result of that conversation was some training, like some actual training that would lead toward, as well as a commitment and a promise to continue growth and career pathing with him. But like, also, here's some training programs that we would pay for you to do so that we're both on the same page as far as investing in you. So for me, I feel like, because a lot of times the place I start is like, what feels good or doesn't feel good to myself. And for me, sometimes the compliments or the thank yous, whether it's in public or private, like, it's great, that's fine, but it's not, doesn't like a thing for me. For me, it's more like when someone does a thing, like, oh, I know you really like movies, so here's a movie gift certificate. Or, oh, I am going to make an effort to like actually show up for a thing that you're involved in or something. So it's more like someone doing a thing in line with what they know is important to me than necessarily just giving me a compliment for what I do day in, day out, or something like that. So as a manager or leader or even a parent, I think that is interesting too, that sometimes, and I also appreciate that sometimes people are giving affirmation for themselves. Like, they want to tell me they appreciate it. And I love that they appreciate it, but I also get like they need to tell me they appreciate it in some way. And it's not really even about me in that moment. But what really moves me is when someone's like, oh, I know this is the thing that's important to you. And then I showed up for that gig, or I got you that gift, or I remembered, that author, or I did that thing that I'm like, wow, they are actually paying attention to like the details.
Right. Yeah.
How about you, Francisca?
Yeah, I mean, and I really appreciate and recognize all of what you are sharing, but my thoughts are also going to a memory where I was regularly appreciating someone in a certain way. I think when I heard you kick off our conversation, Beth, in a way that I would like to be treated. For me, that would be like, I would like to feel heard, listened to, and I would like for people to make at least an attempt to understand what I'm saying. And this is a way that I automatically relate to many people. When I'm not aware, this is how I do it. So it's funny to have this conversation. It immediately gets me reflect on, how do I usually do it? And I do recall this situation where this is how I was relating to one of my colleagues, and a guy, 15 years younger than I am. And at some point in time, he said that he didn't like the way I treated him, because he felt like a little boy. And although my intentions were good, like I wanted him to know that I saw him, I saw his intentions, I could see what he was doing. I wanted to really confirm and help him, do more of that, because in the framework of the team, that was excellent. But he couldn't deal with that. And I think that in some cultures also, the cultures cannot deal with appreciation. So it remains very situational, what to say, what not to say, what not to do. I think it really requires sensitivity of who we are, how the other person is, what the situation is. There's a lot to think about. and to take into account is maybe too much.
Yeah, and as you're talking, one insight I'm having too is that sometimes in order to appreciate someone the way they want to be appreciated, I need to stretch out of my comfort zone. So like, if I don't like public anything, but I know someone loves a public thing, then like, I've got to do a public thing so they feel acknowledged, even if it's not my thing. Or if my thing isn't a thank you note, but I know someone loves a thank you note. Like, there's also a thing of like stretching out of your comfort zone to do the thing that's meaningful to another person that might meet up with some resistance, but I think it really makes a difference.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And sometimes it requires that we actually ask them what would be meaningful, as opposed to just trying to guess. Because we don't always know, and we can be surprised. And I mean, it's a conversation you have to kind of feel your way into. It's not just like, okay, I'm ticking this off. How do you like to be acknowledged? But there's a point, I think, at which we may need to be in that inquiry with somebody so that we can actually do what feels good to them and have them actually fully get how much we appreciate them.
How would you have that conversation? Like, it might be interesting to just do a little, like, what would you actually say to somebody, both in a personal scenario, like if it is your kids or something, and in a professional scenario, to get that answer? Like, how would you say it?
I've actually had a couple conversations like that, and I think it's a combination of really what Francisca and Peg both have said, is that you have to have an awareness. So if you've acknowledged somebody and maybe the reaction isn't what you thought, you have to be tuned into that. That's a clue. That's an awareness that says, oh, that actually didn't land the way I thought it would. So sometimes I've actually asked, for example, I'll use an example with my husband. We are completely opposite in how we love being acknowledged, completely opposite. And so for him, when I give him a compliment, he just absolutely, it's like it won't penetrate. He can't even absorb it. And there's times where I just say, okay, I said that for me, but how would you like me to share with you that I appreciate that? What is it that would actually be meaningful to you? And when I've said things like that, I've heard very interesting things. He said, you know what, when you just acknowledge that I've done a good job, or, don't make a big deal out of it, but just acknowledge it, so I actually know that you saw it, that's all I need. Mm-hmm. So it actually, he was saying, tone it down, Beth. Mm-hmm. Tone it down for me.
Mm-hmm. Mm. Yeah. Another thing that puzzles me, because we work so much in organizations and in teams, that pretty much always part of the conversation is that people don't feel appreciated. And part of that puzzles me, but what I see, and that might also be a cultural thing for the Netherlands, like when you don't cause trouble, when you just do your work and you do your best, and because people are so busy and there's so much troubleshooting, that kind of they're just forgotten. And also part of the culture is to not wanting to make a big fuss out of it, to not asking for appreciation or acknowledgement. And at the same time, like if you don't get it, if you're just not, there's not whatsoever attention paid to you, then they really get cranky. So there is this culture of feeling unappreciated. I don't know if it's in the States, it is also like that, chronically feeling unappreciated by peers, by their leadership, by their organization. God knows who that might be, and that's really puzzling. I don't know if you have any thoughts about that. Where does that come from?
I actually do want to insert something, and then Peg, maybe you can pick up my thought from here. We see a lot with teams and organizations, Andrea, the lack of appreciation, or whatever you want to call it. It comes from a team being very clear about setting. They have plans, they execute on the plans, they go ahead and they complete the plans, and then they start that cycle over and over again. But they're missing a very important thing that we all know and appreciate as the cycle of productivity. Mm-hmm. Peg, can you talk about how you've seen when organizations use that, and what impact does it give?
And the piece that's the missing piece in that is that acknowledgement place where people take the time, hit the pause button, and really think about it. And the way we often recommend they do it is, what out of this, project or plan worked, what maybe didn't work, and what did we learn from it? And when they mine the learnings from it, then they get completion and they can move on to the next part. I think what that's pointing to is when it's just this ongoing cycle of take action, get result, take action, get result. People get exhausted by that. They feel like they never get the opportunity to sort of stop the action for a moment, take it all in, and feel complete with the work that they've done as a team before they move on to that next thing. Mm-hmm. So that really feels like that's an important place for people to sort of hit that pause button and really go. And it's not like it's time consuming, but without doing that, I think people feel like they're on a treadmill after a while. They're just racing towards the next goal, whatever that next goal is.
Yeah, I think there's the cycle of productivity to make sure people pause to acknowledge a completion and not just to add on more and more and more, for sure. I also feel like part of this is appreciating our own selves along the way, so we don't need so much validation from other people all the time. So how do you get up and be really clear about what you're doing and how you did it? And sometimes even asking for acknowledgement from your organization, from the team, from a colleague, from someone personally, so that it's not always like this waiting game of like someone should acknowledge me and someone should know what I need, but taking ownership of that acknowledgement and providing it for yourself in a meaningful way is miraculous in terms of not feeling quite so depleted and quite so like you're so hungry for it from someone else, even though it is always appreciated. And two tricks that I use because appreciating people doesn't come naturally to me like it does to some of you all here. Like it's something I actually have to stop and think about because I want people to know they're valued. It's part of who I am, but it's not the thing that happens naturally. So one trick that I use is that if I do want someone to feel acknowledged and I don't know if they like how to, I might propose a couple ideas. Like I might say, I really appreciated this thing that you did. I want to acknowledge you. Would you like just to go hang out for a little while? Would you like me to, do this, and this? And then they can respond to the ideas and be like, actually, this would be really meaningful to me. Or actually, just you saying that is enough. But I can have an idea. Because sometimes if you just ask somebody, how do you want to be acknowledged? It's like a blank stare. Like, I don't really know. I don't need to be acknowledged. There's all that whole thing. So if you can say, here are some ideas, whether it's for a birthday or an end of a project or whatever, that really helps them, whether it's performance review time at a company or whether it is, in your personal relationships. And then the other thing I do is I actually use my calendar, so like I might put some little reminders in my calendar of like, spend, an hour thinking about who's really made a difference for you right now, and then reach out in a way that works. Or something like just like little things that pop up to remind me to just like pause and appreciate the people. Otherwise, I might not remember. So when we talk about the practicalities of like how the organization, Andrea, to your point, actually on the organization side, start to put things in, it's like understanding how appreciation is part of a performance review, understanding how to ask the question, and then possibly even putting reminders in throughout the year, not just waiting for the performance review, of like really showing your team how much you appreciate them.
Betsy, you bring up something here, if somebody acknowledged you in a way that maybe fell flat a little bit for you, it's not what you particularly like. I still think we all subscribe to, there's a really simple response to that, and it's thank you. And there's graciousness in that, like just thank you, not like, oh, no big deal, or I don't really like it when you do that. It's just be gracious in the moment, say thank you, because then it's done. The person providing it gave it to you. You say thank you. That's it. That's done. But then if you do want to redirect that person, help them know how to help you. So you do have an opportunity. It's twofold, for you to go back and say later, hey, when you acknowledge me, you know what would really work for me? So I love that you ask, but I also love it when we take responsibility for putting that out there too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of personal responsibility that's coming through, both the personal responsibility and seeking feedback that tells us how somebody really would like to be acknowledged or a team would like to be acknowledged. And then there's the responsibility on us to help somebody else actually acknowledge us in a way that feels good. And make that feel like that two-way street.
Yeah. And I think one of the things, nobody just wants to be taken for granted. If you look deep down, so also people who deliver in a consistent way, always the ones who never fail, and you get so used to a certain standard, just to stop yourself and see like, okay, I'm this taking the other person for granted piece that then might wake you up and go back. And it is so good to know that when you work with people or be with people around you, to look, what are the people around me and how many are there, so that no one is really forgotten.
Yeah.
Also.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, I do love the platinum rule. Treat others the way they
Yes.
want to be treated.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Yes. Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah, stretch out of your comfort zone to do it. And
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we have, when we have our foundation programs, one of the questions that we have about what are you thankful for. So you get this whole, what do you thank others for, and so forth. And then comes the nicest question: what would you like to be thanked for? And that always, I find it's really an emotional moment when people really open up to what they would love to be thanked for, and it's different. It also shows the vulnerability, and then often that this is the piece that they often not are thanked for, but then they own it. At least they themselves own it, because it's out in the open. This is always a very emotional moment.
yeah, for sure, for sure. So I'm hearing that if you are listening to this either live now or the recording, there are a few things that you could do within even the next 24 hours. One is to ask yourself that question: what would I like to be acknowledged for or thanked for? And then thank yourself for it, so that you're practicing the self acknowledgement and appreciation. Another might be to think to yourself, how do I like to be acknowledged? And can I share that in a way that's meaningful with people around me that might make a difference, so that I'm not just like hoping and wishing that someone acknowledges me in the way that I want? And then the third is to look around either work or home and with key people to see like, do I know how they like to be acknowledged?
Mm-hmm.
Have I done it lately? Is it a rhythm that I like? Is there a conversation I need to have to ask what makes the biggest difference for them? And challenge yourself to do that. So maybe one or all three of those things, I think, would really cause you to have a pretty good day.
I think so too.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I love this conversation. Thanks for being in it today.
It's always fun, actually.
Yeah,
Yes.
thanks everybody for
Yeah.
sure.
Yes.
And those of you watching, thanks for tuning in on Fridays, Facebook Live. And then if you subscribe to our YouTube channel or follow us on Facebook or LinkedIn, you'll have another chance to get these videos when they're republished the following week. Thank you, and we hope you have a great Friday and a great week, and we'll be back next Friday. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.